Welcome back to the Star Trek Critic, where each episode is graded like a school project, taking 1 point away for each error, and I make snarky comments all the way through. Today's episode is The Drumhead. The plot, a Star Trek witch hunt. The first point is lost here. If the warp core was damaged, why are they moving? And another point, why are the nacelles shining blue? They should be off. Another point lost, if the Enterprise is damaged, they should have sent another starship there immediately as protection because it's vulnerable to attack. And another point lost, the Klingon Empire is at peace with the Federation. They are not members of the Federation. There would not be a Klingon on this ship. And I know Worf is on the Enterprise, but Worf is a member of the Federation, not the Klingon Empire. Spoiler alert, Dijon is actually innocent of having anything to do with the explosion, but he is guilty of sending information to the Romulans. And does he really think he can escape the Enterprise if Worf gives him a shuttlecraft? Worf doesn't believe so either and decides it's time to open up a can of Klingon whoop-ass. Yes! Then Worf says, I'm gonna rat you out, neener, neener, neener. Captain Picard says Gene Simmons is going to assist with the investigation. Not that Gene Simmons, this one. The next point is lost because the Enterprise has a crew of over 1,000. They already have a legal team on board to do investigating, but you never see them. Picard introduces Sati as his first officer, and then he already wants to take her to her quarters. What a pervert. Now he thinks the Admiral is a wizard and has a staff. Look quick, Riker checks out the transporter operator before he leaves. He's a little pervert too, isn't he? Here's the timeline. 4 days have passed since the explosion, and it'll be 2 more days before they can get in because of the radiation. The next point is lost for not ejecting the warp core after this accident. You can still examine it in space and it would have cleared out the radiation a lot faster. So they have to be suspicious for 2 more days instead of examining it out in space where it's safe. Picard is worried about a Klingon-Romulan alliance and asks Admiral Sati if she knows anything. Sati says, I've already seen the rest of Season 4, but I'm not going to tell you what happens. Jean-Luc gives Sati a cup of brown tea, but he takes his black, like his men. Worf says, Excuse me, Captain, I didn't know you had a woman in here. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything. Well, if you excuse me now, I gotta spread a whole bunch of rumors with security. Picard says, Worf, would you like to join us for a threesome? Worf says, I'd be honored, but I think we should first get back to the storyline. Worf says I figured it out. After 200 years, the Klingons still sneak information out by injecting it in their bloodstreams. I saw this in the pilot of Star Trek Enterprise. Picard says, That's impossible, Worf. That show doesn't come out for another 10 years. Then Worf says, Well, then how do you know about it? Have you been time traveling again in the captain's yacht? Besides, that took place 200 years ago, and you can see it on the holodeck like Riker and Troy did. Picard says, Worf, that was a terrible episode, and it won't come out for 15 years, and that's the wrong captain's yacht. That's for the next Enterprise. Worf's response, of course, is, well, you'll have to take that up with the narrator because I don't make these videos. 1 point lost here because the Enterprise is moving. Worf does a great job here, but 1 point is lost since Dijon does not get a legal counsel, and 1 point lost since the ship's legal team should be doing the interrogating, and they would also interrogate Worf as a witness to what he found. The cat is now out of the bag. A sect of Klingons would rather ally themselves with the Romulans and not the Federation. Sati is thinking, oh hell yeah, that's job security for me. And if he's going to admit that much and still say he had nothing to do with the explosion, he probably had nothing to do with the explosion. Sati tells Worf to have him confined, and Picard says, That's my line. Mr. Worf, have him confined. Sabin acknowledges his existence. Sati didn't get ordered there by Starfleet. She is a retired admiral. She looks for trouble and then volunteers to make even more trouble. Her father loved it when she nailed one of them. That can be taken so many different ways. She and her brothers were abusive to small animals. They would wrangle it around from one side to the other, and their father would time how long it took. What a horrible family. Sabin tries to pull the guilty Klingon card, but Worf says, you're full of shit. Of course, they already know there's a Klingon-Romulan alliance building, and he's trying to find out who's involved. They interview Beverly and say, Doctor, you called this show sexist, but still came back. Why? And Beverly says, because that's where the money is. Thank you, Dr. Crusher. You just admitted sex sells. Tarsus was born on Mars colony. That means he's not human. He is a Martian. They need to get this right. 1 point lost here. If DeJohn went into sickbay to get those injections, why did he have that syringe in his room? Now Tarsus talks about his limited sexual experience. He might have done it twice, with a group of people in 10 forward. There were several of them, having one of the ship is about to explode orgies, while the bridge crew was trying to save them all. Sabin says, he's lying. He's been to more than just that one orgy. Picard says, it's really not that big of a deal. We've all had those orgies when we thought the ship was going to explode. That's why we all joined Starfleet. But Sabin is not a member of Starfleet and never got to go to those orgies, so wants to expose everyone for getting more action in one night than he's gotten in his entire life. That's why he's here. Admiral Satie adjusts her dress before she sits down. Does that count as a Picard maneuver? 1 point lost because Sabin is full Betazoid. He is able to read minds, not just emotions like Deanna. Picard is concerned about having a Betazoid as an investigator. Satie calls him out for using Deanna, and Picard says, well, she barely had 5 lines in this episode, and she's on the show for more, figurative reasons. Picard says there is a difference. Obviously, he's not one of those woke liberals of today. Satie says you can't allow him access to sensitive areas of the ship. Picard's like, he works in the medical field, he doesn't go down there. They are all excited because they waited 6 days to ride the elevator that goes nowhere. Geordi says they scoured it inch by inch. That is a figure of speech, so I can't take a point for him not using the metric system. Geordi uses an inappropriate hand sign. Never ever make that hand sign. Geordi and Data both conclude that it was a defective part, and Satie's like, well shit, now I'm out of a job. Satie and her entourage miss an opportunity. They could actually go to McKinley's station and do a witch hunt there and find out who's been making these defective parts, but they decide to stay on the Enterprise. Sabin wants to investigate Tarsus and the orgies. Of course, when they want you to be suspicious of someone, they always use the word Confederates. The warp nacelles are lit with no warp core, and why isn't there a ship protecting them? Picard says, why are all these people here? Satie says, I work better with an audience. It's so upsetting Jean-Luc performs the Picard maneuver. 300 years in the future, they still get their chairs from Office Depot. 1 point lost for assigning Riker as legal counsel. It should be a member of the ship's legal staff. They have one. Tarsus says he doesn't need protection. That's not good because he's been in all those orgies. Beverly is sitting in the audience, so 1 point lost for asking her questions when she's not on the stand. Looks like she's been drinking on the job, just like McCoy. Beverly defends the events in 10 Fort. She says they're not orgies, it's just an innocent social gathering. That's what they're calling it now. Satie says, I want names and I'll bet you they have videos on OnlyFriends. Picard's like, I've had enough of this shit. Sabin uses Tarsus' security clearance against him, and -1 point here. Picard and Riker both do nothing when he lies about the explosion in engineering. Sabin calls Tarsus a liar. Tarsus calls Sabin the second baseman. And all hell breaks loose when it turns out Tarsus is half Martian, half human, and half Romulan. 1 point lost here. The Enterprise is massive. The security would have their own office. They wouldn't need to use the conference room. Of course, with Romulans in the mix, Worf is going to side with Satie. Picard says, I get to quote the name of the episode in this speech. Question for everyone out there. Have the Star Trek writers created a constitution for Starfleet and the Federation, or do they just make up things as they go along? Picard says, Tarsus, life gave you a lemon, so let's make some lemonade. Then he says, tell me about Mars Colony, and how are those robots acting? He says, have you considered going the whole route? Tarsus says, I did that at the 10 Forward orgy with a whole group of people. You miss out on a lot when you're trying to save the ship. Then Picard says, no, why didn't you become an officer? So Tarsus says, well, the truth is, in the military, enlisted outnumber officers by 5 to 1, and they usually join to pay for college and have no interest in becoming a stuffy officer. But Hollywood will portray everyone in a military show as an officer, since in reality, Hollywood has no clue on how the military actually works. Picard says, now Tarsus, tell me about the orgy. Tarsus says, sir, I have nothing to hide. I was 18 and eager. There were several of us, actually. Once or twice in 10 Forward with a group of people. I might have done it twice. I didn't want to wait for anything. He hardly ever talked. He just came in for his injections. I know that it would have made my mother very happy, but I don't need protection. And now it's done, isn't it? My career in Starfleet is finished, and that mistake will be with me for the rest of my life. And Picard says, yes, unprotected sex in an orgy is very serious. Picard says, Admiral Satie, I need to talk to you without your annoying stenographer. Satie says, I can't believe this, Picard. Livingston is a lionfish, the most invasive species on Earth. Is this fish meant to symbolize that Starfleet is colonizers? And Picard says, well, yes, of course, that's what Star Trek is all about. Half the time, Starfleet is colonizing space, while the other half of the time we are dealing with the screwed up governments of planets we didn't colonize. That's what the series has been about for decades. Admiral Satie admits she is one of those retirees that can't just sit on the beach and be retired, and still wants to work, so wanders around on starships causing trouble to justify her having a job. And Starfleet pays her to do this? So is the noose on her dress also symbolic that she's trying to hang everybody? Picard and Satie get into a pissing match, but it turns out Satie just wants to have everybody hung. Or hanged. Riker's thinking, well, why didn't she interview me? I'm hung. This is one of the few times where you actually see Captain Picard distracted. Did you notice the stenographer walks all the way around the bridge to serve Captain Picard? She says, that's what you get for not wanting me in that meeting. The next point is lost because this is reused footage from the pilot, but instead of Admiral McCoy, it's Admiral Henry. Again, he quotes from a constitution that may or may not exist. Patrick Stewart gives a soliloquy, and due to the pompous ass that he is, I'll bet he's going to do it again. He calls the witch hunt fearful and cowardly. It's actually a good speech. And today, to extinguish a man would be cancel a man. Now they accuse Captain Picard of violating the Prime Directive 9 times since he took command. Picard says, oh, you must be mistaken. This is Star Trek. I violated the Prime Directive 9 times a year. They're really reaching in their accusations here, though. Starfleet knows about this incident, and they approved what he did. Shout out to Lieutenant Worf standing up for Captain Picard, and then he finds out that Sabin is a little two-faced bastard, isn't he? Worf is now ready to open a can of Klingon whoop-ass on a Betazoid. This is just hitting below the belt here. Patrick Stewart gets to do another soliloquy in the same show. Shout out to the writers for making this speech too. It really sinks in when you're making these videos on election day. Riker's like, wait a second, how come I never get to do a soliloquy? Picard's such a pompous ass, he should be up there making this speech. And hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That has been true for the last 200,000 years of evolution. Tarsus is thinking, damn, she's psycho. Satie learns that once you're retired, you should probably stay retired instead of coming back and ruining your entire lifetime reputation. Sabin's like, let's take a break. Earl Billings was born in Ohio and has over 100 screen credits, including What's Happening, Knight Rider, and Mr. 3000. He doesn't have any lines in this Star Trek episode, but the scene where he walks out says enough because he's telling Admiral Satie, Admiral, you're screwed. Picard and Worf have a rare male bonding moment. Worf realizes how easy it is to fall into the trap of the witch hunters, and both wonder, how could they possibly think there would be a Klingon-Romulan alliance? Picard actually gives a third speech, and shout out to the writers again because this speech is very informative when you're doing this on election day. Anne Shea was the stenographer. Henry Roronix is a stage actor. He's also been on Quantum Leap, and we'll see him again on Voyager. Bruce French is from Iowa with 150 screen credits. He will be back on Insurrection, Enterprise, and 9 years on Passions. Spencer Garrett has 220 screen credits, including The X-Files, Dallas, and will be back on Voyager. Gene Simmons was born in London with 100 screen credits, including The Blue Lagoon, Guys and Dolls, and the Dark Shadows reboot, but was never a member of KISS. The Drumhead, an excellent example of how witch hunts get carried away, gets a score of 84. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below. Click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I'll see you again next week.